Everybody has a story, and every story needs to be heard. On this podcast, we are talking with each member of the General Conference Leadership Council. I'm your host, Alyssa Truman, and this is ANN Profiles. Today, I'm here with Karen Porter. She serves as an Associate Secretary of the General Conference. Hello, Karen.
Hi,
We've already
Alyssa.
had so many laughs. It's kind of great. You know, the funny thing is, I see you as this really very fun person. I think the few times where we've been able to sit down and talk, we've laughed probably more than we've had silence. But I actually know nothing about you at all.
Oh, that's
I just
good.
know. Well, by the end of this, I'll know it all. But the thing I know about you is that you are just a fun, vivacious person. You're full of energy, full of life, and I'm really excited that I get to spend this next few minutes here with you, and we get to talk and get to know. Well, I really just get to know you, and I'm still an enigma to you, but that's okay. So, Karen, before we started the podcast, we were talking a little bit. You're the associate secretary, but you actually have a very specific area that you oversee. So let's talk really quickly about that before we kind of delve back into the early years of Karen Porter. What is your other role, kind of, that you serve?
Well, you might know that in Secretariat, General Conference Secretariat, there are several associate secretaries. So I'm not the only associate secretary, and each one has their own roles. And so my role, I serve as a liaison to the Euro-Asia Division and the Ukrainian Union. And I also serve as the missionary care coordinator. And then the bigger role is the co-director of International Personnel Resources and Services, or IPRS.
Because we love our initials and acronyms in the church.
We have pages of them.
We do.
Yes.
That was like a whole workshop that I somehow missed when I got here, was the acronym workshop. So what is the purpose of IPRS?
IPRS is the processing unit for our missionaries. So all of the missionaries that are sponsored by the General Conference, the full-time missionaries, are processed through IPRS, through the International Personnel Resources and Services. So Secretariat does more of the recruiting and making the decisions of who should serve where. And then once that decision is made, IPRS helps with all of the processing, getting from the very beginning, getting all the documents of that individual together, taking them through a financial clearance, a health evaluation, getting visas for them, helping them with their shipment if they're taking a shipment, all of the allowances, all of that kind of stuff. And we do payroll from our office for all of our missionaries. And we have a shipping specialist, we have an education specialist who helps our missionaries with their children and the education for those children, and other teams as well. But those are kind of the main ones.
So Secretariat, because many people watching this really don't understand the structure of the church. To be fair, sometimes we work in the building and we still struggle to fully understand it. But the department of the secretary, so the Secretariat, that's really the heart of mission service. This is where missionaries go out. They come back to it. This is where the trainings are coming out of it. All the heart of mission is actually in. So when we normally think about what does the secretary do, we think about the committees and annual council or GC session where the people are sitting there and they're doing all this kind of stuff. And you are the working policy and the manuals and all that is part of that. But actually a huge role, part of this role, is actually mission.
We like to say the biggest part of the role is mission. But there are three aspects of Secretariat. One is administrative, one is executive, and one is missional. So in Secretariat, we have what we call mission family, several entities under Secretariat, which include Adventist Mission, the Institute of World Mission, Vivid Faith, also Archive Statistics and Research, membership, and IPRS and Secretariat. So all of those entities are working together for mission. So the mission centers, for instance, under Adventist Mission, the associate secretary who has that responsibility is Gary Krause. So his team is also under the mission family and secretariat. So all of us together are working for mission, and it is the most exciting place to be because we are directly interacting with the missionaries and with our mission for the church.
You know, we're going to just make that be a draw because I actually think my department's the most exciting to work.
Let's discuss that some more.
We'll do that somewhere else. Okay. It's okay. We'll just call them even. They're even. But mine's better. Okay. Anyways, so let's talk a little bit about you, though. So you're serving in this position, but who is Karen Porter? So, Karen, where were you born?
I was born in Portland, Oregon.
That would be in the United States of America.
In the United States, yes.
So Portland, Oregon.
Yes.
Were your parents Adventist, or
yes.
What's your background?
My father was a pastor, administrator, church administrator, and his grandparents actually came from the Ukraine, from Germany via the Ukraine. And when things got tough there, they immigrated to the U.S. And so his family became Adventist there in Ukraine.
Okay.
So we have a history of Adventism, of course, but my dad worked in the Oregon Conference and then in the Minnesota Conference and then back in the Northern California Conference before he retired.
He stayed in all the cold parts of America.
Yep.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
I'm like, snow.
Yes.
Yeah, you can find snow. And what about your mother?
My mom was also an Adventist. Her father and grandparents were Adventists as well. But my grandfather on her side was a country veterinarian in South Dakota. And I say that's where I get my love of animals from.
All right, so which animals do we love the most?
Oh, it depends on which ones you have.
Okay. All right, so do you have pets?
We have actually, technically, a dog that belongs to our daughter.
Okay.
But he's a big dog.
Would we call this a grand dog then, since your daughter's dog?
Well, he's big. I don't know how grand, but he's a Great Pyrenees lab mix, so they're big. He's big and white. But we say that he, the dog, helps with the fostering of puppies, because our daughter fosters puppies, and when puppies come into a shelter, they need families to care for them, and so we bring one or maybe sometimes two at a time, and it's the older dog that actually teaches the puppies what they should and shouldn't do. But anyway, we've always had, in our family, we've had cats and dogs. My grandmother had a horse until she was in her 70s and rode it. So animals are very important.
So you like cats and dogs?
Yeah, I like other
Rodents?
things. No.
Okay, I'm wondering where this lines.
Where the line is?
Mine is at the rodents.
Well, yeah, when you have to catch something in a trap in your house, you don't want those as pets, probably.
No, even if it's in a glass box. We had guinea pigs for a while. We had 3 guinea pigs. We have a parrot right now, and we've had cats.
My grandmother raised parakeets, and so we always had a parakeet or two.
They're so chirpy.
Yeah, they are. And messy.
Oh, it's just... Yes.
But they're good.
My parrot loves my husband. Like, it actually has imprinted on my husband. So if I come in the room, to like kiss my husband goodbye or something, the parrot will fly over to my husband's shoulder and try to attack me because it's like, no, he's mine.
He's mine. Huh?
It's like, no, actually, he was mine before. I bought you. Like, let's make this clear. Anyways, so now that we've tangented onto parrots and other wild animals here. So you were raised in Oregon to a father who was a pastor or administrator. What was your mom doing? She
was a housewife, and then she actually started a business. It's called Pathfinder Names. So, the little name strips of the club names. She started that business, and she did that, until I was able to take over, actually. And so I had that business for a while. Then when we went overseas, my sister took it and so on. But yeah.
I feel like that's a spoiler alert. She goes overseas, everybody.
Oh, shock.
Some people might not know, right? All right. So you've been raised in Adventist. Did you go to Adventist education?
Yes. I went to grade school in Portland Adventist Elementary School, I think is what it was called then. And then I went to Columbia Academy, which is in Washington State, just over the river. Went there 4 years, graduated from there, and that summer my folks moved to Minnesota. So at that time, you had to go to the college.
It was in your union.
Yep. So I went to Union College. Yeah. But it was good. I liked it.
Slinging the ink? Or something like that, right? Slinging the ink and paper too, or I don't know.
Slinging the ink and pushing the pen.
Yeah. I've heard this saying because I have enough people I know who have some kind of a union background. Yeah. But so do you have any elementary experiences or teachers that kind of stood out to you? Was there anything special that you remember about those elementary years?
Not particularly. We had I think it was a fourth grade teacher who was a man, which was kind of unusual. But I really liked him, and he helped us with contests with words and, finding it. He would give us one long word, and we'd try to figure out, how many words you could get from that. Yeah, those kinds of things. I like that. But otherwise, I was just busy. I played an instrument. So
which instrument?
A saxophone.
I was going to say, you've got to know that's going to be the next question, right? If you make something vague, it's going to become like, you play a saxophone. Do you still play the saxophone?
I haven't played it in a number of years, but I still have it.
Very cool. So you go through your elementary years. Were you a part of like Pathfinders and all those?
We were part of Pathfinders. My dad actually was the youth director at that time. And so every Sabbath we were in a different church, So it was a little hard to be totally involved in a Pathfinder group. But we were involved in Pathfinders. And it was during that time that the Big Lake Youth Camp property was purchased. He facilitated that and then built the camp. So every summer we spent at summer camp.
That's fun.
It was the best, yeah.
What makes summer camp a fun experience? What made it the best for you?
Oh, just all the experiences. Well, the boys too. I mean,
All right, I love your honesty already. Okay.
Well,
besides
we
the
were
boys,
there.
Karen.
No, we were there in boys' camps. It was only boys, and it was us, the camp director's girls. So we had all the boys, Anyway, besides
we can keep going with this if you want to.
I think learning all of the different activities. I mean, we were able to do everything. From archery to swimming to sailing to canoeing to skiing to horseback riding to, pottery. Everything. And, my mom taught some and my dad taught water skiing, and I ended up, the two of us taught together. We would trade off. One would drive the boat and the other one would be, with the kids, and then we'd trade. And so I think just the learning all of those things.
Summer camp is like I only got to go 1 year, but it was fun. I mean, it is like you just show up at the pottery place and you can paint your own pottery, and then next thing you know, you're at the swimming pool, and it's just like it feels like such like a wholesome adventure almost, and I'll be honest, I did look at the boys too. So just to, just to make it so you weren't the only awkward person talking about the boys in summer camp here. So you go to Upper Columbia Academy.
No,
Columbia.
Yes.
You say Columbia Academy.
Yes.
Upper Columbia is further
Yes.
up.
Yes.
Ironic, right? So you go to Columbia Academy.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever struggle with your faith? You were raised an Adventist, but just because we're raised Adventist doesn't mean that it becomes inherently ours. You've had these summer camp experiences and all that. But did you ever kind of struggle with Adventism or Christianity, or just thought it was boring, or?
Not really. I think, as a family, being involved all the time in church and church activities and fun church activities, not just boring, you have to go and do this kind of thing. That's one thing I think that I really appreciate about my parents is they always made things fun. So we had a trailer that every weekend, we were off to a different place in the conference, but we all went together, and we had this trailer that we stayed in Friday night, Sabbath night, would come home Sunday. But it was always at some interesting place, the beach or the mountains or something. And it was always a fun experience, but one of faith as well. So it was a combination, and I think that's one thing that we have taken into our family now with our kids is, life is busy, life is a chore sometimes, but let's have fun. Let's be together as a family and do fun things together.
I think, I asked that question because some people have had this, they struggled and whatever. I think for a lot of us, there wasn't that. And so sometimes we think, oh, we don't really have a testimony or whatever. But actually ours is a testimony of faithfulness. Often it comes from the parental faithfulness. Your parents showed you this beautiful picture of Christ. They showed you this beautiful picture of the church. And so as you study it, you may have kind of learned things along the way, but you had such a beautiful foundation that you didn't need it to shake too much. And I think today, as parents, it's something we need to be reminded of, is that we need to make the church beautiful and fun. We need to make faith beautiful and fun. I always tell my kids, I have to figure out which hills I want to die on. There's certain hills, they know I will die on that hill, kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. But I want to say yes more than I say no. And I think we need to take this into our faith world as well. How do we help our young people fall in love with the church? So I love that your parents just kind of created this environment for you that it was enjoyable. You loved it.
Oh, I remember when I got baptized.
How old were you? Do you remember?
Oh, I think I was maybe 6th grade. What is that?
12-ish.
12, 13.
We'll go with 12, 13.
Yeah. The pastor or the evangelist came to the school, and they were having meetings, and then they came, and had Bible classes for the kids at school. And that's when, actually it was Fortis Dedamar. That kind of dates me. It's a long time ago. Anyway, I remember after the baptism, I took this very seriously. And after the baptism, 2 or 3 of my friends were laughing and joking, and I thought, how can they even do that? This is such a serious event and a serious step that I was a little turned off with that. But it showed me that from an early age, I had that desire in me to follow God.
Did you always think you wanted to work for the church?
I always wanted to be a pastor's wife.
I wanted to be a pastor's wife for a while too. Didn't work for me. Um,
And interestingly, and I think the only reason was because my parents had such a fun time at it. Because I know most people don't want to be a pastor's wife, but I did, and that was kind of my goal, I guess I would say.
so when you went to Union, what did you go to Union to be educated in? Because there is not a pastor's wife degree, last I checked.
Well, there could.
Like, well, I don't know, education. I'm joking.
Well, interestingly, I don't remember when, but sometime when I went or right after I was at school, I really felt impressed that I wanted to be a pastor myself. And there was no place for women in pastoral ministry at that point. And so I was very practical and took a secretarial degree and later a business degree because I knew I needed something to support myself if I needed to, but also started dating theology students. So
Did you marry a theology student?
yes, yeah.
Who's your husband?
Mike Porter.
Mike Porter.
Yeah.
Do I know your husband? Mike Porter.
I don't know.
You like, I
I'll
don't know.
introduce you sometime.
Okay, do. Is he in the building?
No. No, he retired a couple of years ago.
Well, please bring him by my office.
Yeah.
I want to meet Mike Porter. So you married a pastor?
Yep.
Okay.
A theology
A
student.
theology student. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you marry a theology student.
Oh, wait, you missed part.
Oh, shoot. Let's go back. Rewind. Rewinding.
No, at Union College, my second year, I decided to be a student missionary.
Excellent. And where did you go and serve your student mission?
Japan.
Japan.
Mm-hmm. So it was after I made that decision that Mike and I started dating. And that was a very difficult, probably to that point, it was the hardest decision I'd ever made. Whether to continue where I thought God was leading me or to change my plans to make sure that, this relationship with Mike would continue. So in the end, I chose to go to Japan. And we dated 3 months before I went. And then the whole year that I was there, we dated by aerograms and cassette tapes. It was too expensive to call. I think maybe one time or maybe twice we were able to talk. But he came to Japan for Christmas.
He came to Japan?
And during Christmas vacation, he asked me to marry him.
Wait a minute. Okay. I'm gonna play this back. We
yeah.
rewound
You
that
heard
a few
right.
more. Yes.
You heard right.
You dated for 3 months.
Yep.
And then you went off.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna guess you go off in like August or September.
Mm-hmm.
And in December, which I was just oohing and eyeing that he came over. So this is like 7-8 months.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Did we say yes?
Did I say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm just making sure because I mean
Yes.
maybe you could have said no now and then you came
No,
back.
I knew it.
So
I knew. When you know, you know.
I do know because I knew
Yeah.
very quickly
Yeah.
with mine. So how long have you been married? Okay.
49 years.
Oh.
Next year will be 50.
Okay, so, all right, so we're going to kind of stop the little life story a little bit here. This is the commercial break. What are the secrets, Karen?
Secrets.
How do, the world is not easy. Ministry is not easy.
No.
Serving in the church is not necessarily easy. But the world is just not easy. How do you make 50 years?
I don't know.
Well,
You just do it. And to me, again, when I said my vows, they were serious. And when there's stuff that goes on, you go back to those vows, and you say, "This is what I signed up for, and we're going to get through this, and let's figure it out."
You took the better and worse
Yeah,
as
yeah.
as a commitment.
Same as sickness and health.
Yeah.
But you also have to have fun.
Yeah, well, there you go. We had the fun too. My husband and I, oh shoot, I probably shouldn't have started that. Let's hear. 22 years. We've been married 22 years. And it has not always been easy. And the most recent, my husband followed me to my call. And, it's...
Mine did too.
Yeah. So... Actually, I think our stories are very similar so far. I knew right away, it's okay. I knew right away that my husband, and actually I think I'm not sure if it was 7 months, but it might not be that far. I basically asked him, I was like, why are you waiting to ask me to marry you? Like, I knew that this is where we were going to be. But you're right. It's going back to it's a commitment. I don't take commitments lightly. And I can be really frustrated. I can be angry. But I'm not going to just run out on it.
But it takes two. If both of us weren't committed, and I say that because we have a lot of friends where one really wants to stay and make it work, and the other one says, forget it. So, it's not a simple thing.
No.
It's not a simple thing.
It's actually a daily decision. And sometimes hourly. And depending on what's going on, it might be a minute. But it's a daily decision that I'm committed. And it's not an easy decision. But I found it too worthwhile. And it seems like you have too after almost 50 years.
Yep.
So you come back from Japan as an engaged woman. Mm-hmm. Were there any special memories that you had while you were over in Japan? What were you doing while you were there?
Teaching English.
Okay.
Special memories. The biggest memory was Mike coming over.
You're like, the engagement kind of trumps it all.
Yeah. But no, there were several. We taught English, but we also taught Bible classes, and so some of those people were eventually baptized, and some of the students were baptized, and to me that was really special, and still have a very, very soft place in my heart for Japan to this day. And the mission project that's going on there now, I've been, following it, been involved in it, so it's some of those early experiences stay with you your whole life.
So you come back, you finished your degree in business. Yes?
No.
No? Okay, I wasn't sure. I was all right. So you get married?
Yes.
To Mike. What does Mike do? He has a theology degree. Does he become a pastor?
Well, when I came back, while I was away, his parents moved from Iowa, where they were working, to Tennessee. And so that meant he had to go to Southern. Oh. So when I came back, I went to Southern. So it set me back a little bit, but I actually finished an associate degree at that point, and then years later went back and got a business degree. So and we both finished at the same time, and as soon as, we had decided that we didn't know where we should go. How do you know where you're supposed to go? So we had agreed that the first official call that we got, we were going to accept. We weren't going to be playing this game of, let's see if this, conference is going to call us. So, that one, we have one, but let's wait. We just said the first one we're going to accept. So we did, and it was to North Dakota.
Another cold place. Karen, do we ever go anywhere warm?
Yeah.
Is there sure we can navigate warm? Okay, good. Because right now, I just feel like putting on a parka, like a jacket. Like, it's cold. Everywhere you go is cold.
But that prepared us for where we were going in the future.
I feel like this is that spoiler alert we were talking about earlier. Okay, so...
Well, one of them.
One of the spoilers. Okay. So you go to North Dakota?
Yes.
you serve?
We were there, how long were we there? 4 or 5 years, I guess. And Mike went to Andrews while we were there and got his master's degree. And then we went to Northern California for a few years, pastoring in Angels Camp area and also Auburn.
Okay.
Auburn, which was near Weimar. So we were involved a little bit. Mike was teaching some classes up there. And the kids came down to our church, the Auburn church, so that was fun. And it was from there that we went overseas.
All right. So before we say where you go overseas, what makes someone decide, I want to go and serve overseas? What was going on in your and Mike's mind that thought, overseas sounds like a really fun option?
Well, for me, I can't speak for him because he claims it was more me, but I don't know. But anyway, it was both of us. But I think growing up, listening to mission stories, having that implanted in you from an early age, hearing about, the Luzero, the stalls on the Luzero boat in the Amazon, or all of the missionary stories. It helps you to want to share the gospel wherever. But I think there's also, you have to have some adventuresome spirit to be able to survive in some of these places, and you have to be willing to give up everything that you know is familiar and go to some weird and strange place. And I don't know, it's just kind of the whole thing all put together, I guess.
All right. So do you look for a call? Like, do you and Mike decide, okay, we like the idea of working overseas. Do you go and look for a call? Do they come find you? How did that work?
Well, we had submitted our application to the General Conference.
To someone like you.
To someone like me. And evidently it just got put aside, and Mike is a pilot, among other things, and so he was thinking, South America, mission pilot, but that never worked out. He's used his flying in mission in other ways, but not as a mission pilot. So we had, I don't know how long our application was at the General Conference. Nothing happened. You need more experience, or you need, we don't need just pastors. We need, whatever. So actually we but we saw and talked with Ralph Watts, who was the ADRA director at that time. And Mike just casually said, does ADRA have any need of people like this anymore, anywhere in the world? And he said, yeah. And a few months later, we had this call.
And where did you go?
We went to Sri Lanka, the tropics.
Yay! It's hot. Really hot.
Really hot. Very hot, yeah.
So you served for ADRA in Sri Lanka.
Yes.
What did you do? Now, was a call for both of you to go, or was it a call for Mike? How does that kind of work?
It was a call for Mike with an assignment for me, and I was working part-time for ADRA, 50% with ADRA, helping to write proposals and all that ADRA does, and then 50% I was working with the women's ministries, children's ministries, and the spouses, shepherdess for the Sri Lanka Union.
What was that like? I mean, you've been to Japan, you were teaching English, but now you're literally just kind of uprooting your lives, moving to a very warm place. That could not have been fully easy, even if you were adventurous.
Well, at that time, there was a civil war going on in Sri Lanka.
So very not easy.
No. And we had some very prominent church people tell us that we were crazy and that we shouldn't go, and that anybody could go do that, but there's not very many people that could, pastor the church like Mike was doing. And if we hadn't felt and known that God was calling us. This was God's call. It wasn't the church's call. It wasn't anyone else's call. We wouldn't have gone. But because we truly felt, after praying and thinking about all the implications, which you cannot know ahead of time, by the way, but we decided to go. And our kids had just finished, we have a son and a daughter, and they had just finished first grade and second grade. And we went.
You're moving a family
Yes.
into a country that's in the midst of a civil war.
Yeah. The day that we went through Singapore. At that time, the division office was in Singapore. We went to get on our plane to go to Sri Lanka, and we got this letter from the airlines telling us that there was an island-wide curfew, and but don't worry, the plane will be able to go and land, and there shouldn't be any problems. We had no idea what a curfew. What's a curfew? You know, how does that affect us? Anyway, so we went, and when we arrived, no one from the mission was able to get to the airport to meet us. They had sent a message, take a taxi and come to the office. And so we were trying to figure out how to get a taxi in this, foreign country, and we finally got 2 taxis. Mike rode with a Buddhist monk in a taxi, and I rode in another taxi with our 2 kids. And after traveling to the office and going through, I've forgotten if it was like 12 or 14 checkpoints, military checkpoints, with men with guns around their shoulders pointing them at us, I wondered what we were doing there. And but yet we still knew that we were supposed to be there. And throughout the time, most of the time that we were there, it was a war situation. And the war wasn't about us or, anything to do with the foreigners, but we were in the middle of it sometimes. And our kids saw some things you hope you never have to see, and experienced some things, and we did as well. And one time I remember we were up at our school at Loch Bahana, and we got word that our house had been broken into. And none of us, and it was an island-wide curfew. Again, nobody could move. Mike finally was able to get a taxi and go down and see what the damages were. And I stayed up with the kids, and I think it was during that time that, I was really questioning, what in the world are we doing here? Are we really supposed to be here? Does God really want us here, or are we just making that up, But I was doing some research for some class I was taking, and I came across a story. You've probably heard of it, but a story that about Ellen White. When she was taking a ship from, I think it was from Boston, Maine to Portland, Maine, somewhere like that. And there was a storm that came. And, it was a really bad storm. And she was in the women's cabin, ladies' cabin. And all of the ladies were shouting and screaming, and some were praying, and some were, confessing their sins. And it was just chaotic. And someone asked her, "Aren't you afraid?" And her answer is something that helped me at that time, and I've shared it most recently, like 2 weeks ago when we were in Ukraine. But her answer was, "If my work on earth is finished, there's no better place to lie than in the bottom of the sea. If my work on earth is not finished, there's no power on earth that can harm me." And so, bottom line, you put your faith and your trust in God, and if you are there to do His work, and He still has a job for you to do, you will be there. And if not, you won't be. It's easy to say, isn't it? But it's not easy to live.
It's a very easy thing to say. It's a very hard thing to live. And you're a mom. of young kids.
Yeah, I had these, what in the world did we do?
And it's very different when it's you and your husband and maybe it's an adventure. If you're single, I'm only taking care of myself. When you're married, you're taking care of something, but they're a grown adult. We're making the decision. But when you bring innocent children, it's really hard as a parent because you're like, I don't want to mess them up for life. I don't, and it's that struggle, that tension between absolute trust in God and his call and what everything inside you wants to think and believe. How do you navigate that as a mom?
Well, I don't know, because it was very frustrating. One of the things that we ended up doing was to send our kids to an international school. Well, both Mike and I grew up in Adventist schools, and we were never going to send our kids to any other kind of school. So that was the first thing. What do you do? Okay, I could teach them at home. They may not still be living after me, but
like, this might not end well.
it just wasn't me. It wasn't for me. And so what we decided to do is we sent them to the best school that we could find for them, and it was an international school. And then we supplemented with Bible at home. We got the curriculum they were using here at the time, and we did Bible at home.
How long did you serve in Sri Lanka?
We were there 5 years.
5 years. And was the silverware for most of this?
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you go after Sri Lanka? This is fun. I love your responses. You just giggle. Like, you ready for this? All right, where do we go?
Russia.
Another very easy country. I can see we don't like challenges or adventures at all.
Well, but let me tell you how we got there. Because it was nothing to do with us. Nothing. So in Sri Lanka, at that time, if you wanted to watch a video, you had to go to the video store and get a cassette and plug it in your player and all of that. So Mike was at this video store, and he was looking at videos, and he had one in his hand, and he didn't even know what it was. But this younger lady came in, and she asked the shopkeeper, "Do you have this video?" And it was the one that Mike had in his hand. And Mike said, "Well, here, you can have it. I mean, I'm not planning to take this anyway." "Oh, no, we can't do it." Anyway, she ended up talking quite a while with Mike, and she invited us to come over to their house, for a meal. And Mike told her, we kind of have a strange diet, and all of that. "Oh, no, I cook vegetarian very well." Well, it turned out to be the wife of the Soviet news agency TASS person assigned in Sri Lanka.
What's TASS?
It's the Soviet news agency.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's
TASS. Okay,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Another acronym.
Yeah. And so we became friends with them, and we had a nice relationship. I believe the man was an agnostic. His wife was a Orthodox Catholic kind of believer. And so we had this interesting relationship. And on one of our furloughs, annual leaves, or furloughs then, we decided to go and visit them in Russia. Now, we have to say, I have to back up a minute. So when communism fell, the head office in Moscow sent a notice out to their news agencies around the world: sell all of the office equipment and everything, and within a couple of weeks you need to be back in Moscow, or we're not going to pay your way home. And so that's what they were doing. They were selling, everything that they had. And one of the things that they had was a car, a nice Toyota newer car. And so we ended up buying that car from them, which is a whole nother story. But so they invited us to come and visit them after they went back to Russia. And so we did. And we ended up staying with them in their small apartment. The four of us, I think, shared one room, and we walked all over Moscow. And while we were there, we said, well, we need to make a connection with the church. Just let them know that we're here, and so on. So Mike reached out to the ADRA director, and so they met up, and that was it. And we went on our furlough, and about a few months later, we got a call to go to the Euro-Asia division for Mike to work with ADRA. And I started my work in secretariat there.
Okay.
So he had the privilege of opening all of the ADRA offices, like in all the stans in Armenia, Georgia, Azerbaijan, all of the countries, Russia itself, and Ukraine, and just starting the ADRA work after the fall of communism.
Very interesting. And you start in secretariat.
I started in secretariat.
So what did you start doing?
I was the administrative assistant in secretariat, and they had one person in the office that could speak Russian, and they worked in Russian. And then they had me, and one of my main responsibilities was taking minutes in English, so that we had the English medium, and we could share it with the general conference and so on. So that's what I did. We set up the office. We set up the archives, the actual filing system, everything, because it was a brand new office.
Because the division's new. Yes?
It
No.
was reconstituted.
Okay.
Because during communism, it couldn't function openly. But it was functioning. They had their system in place. But this was the reconstituted office, in Moscow.
So how many years were you guys in Moscow?
Just under 4.
Okay. And you served as the assistant
Yes.
in secretariat
Yes.
during that time?
Yeah.
And then where do you go after this?
We came here.
To the GC?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
Well,
that was a quick tour of the world.
When we were in Russia, our son had finished 8th grade in Sri Lanka.
Okay.
And so now he's in 9th grade. But he was doing home study, and we had a little school there for all the missionary kids in Moscow. And they brought a teacher just for the kids. And so he would go to school and do his 9th grade work, but with the younger kids. So he was like the big brother to everybody. But after the first year, we had a mission trip group that came from Highland View Academy, and he joined that mission trip group. I forgot where they went, if they went to Moldova or somewhere. I think it was Moldova. At the end of that, he said, "Mom, Dad, I think I want to go home to Academy." And we said, "No."
That's so far away.
I swore I would never send my kids home without us, because I'd seen too many kids get messed up. And yet we did. So at that time we said, okay, so he went home that year. And the next year, our daughter went home, Sarah went home. And so we sat down and we said, look, we can get a job anywhere, but you guys are the most important to us. So if you feel like we need to be home for you guys, we'll be home in an instant. And Andrew said, no, don't come home, because I still want to travel, to see you wherever you are. And Sarah said the same. But after a couple of years, it was mainly Sarah that said, yeah, I think it's time for you to come home. And so we came home. That's why we came home. So we came here. Mike came to ADRA International, and I came to Secretariat.
What was your first role in Secretariat here at the GC?
The executive assistant for the secretary of the General Conference.
Who was the secretary at that time?
G. Ralph Thompson.
Okay.
And then later, Matthew Bediaco.
Okay. So you serve as their administrative assistant, executive assistant. How does the transition start?
Well, about, was it 4 or 5 years later, another interesting story, nothing that we asked for, but Mike was asked to be the Middle East Union president. So I made him come up and ask my boss, or tell him that we were thinking of leaving. Because, at that time, why would you send an American to the Middle East, for one thing? But we went to the Middle East. So we were there for 4 years. And while there, I really didn't have a job except for 6 months. And during that 6 months, I updated the working policy for the Middle East Union. And that's a real fun job. Anybody.
I am like, yeah, if they need someone, I volunteer,
But I didn't mind it. I didn't, it was okay. So when we left there, we went to California, and I started working in the GC representative's office on the campus of Loma Linda University with the GC representative, who at that time was a retired associate secretary. And so I was working there, and then when he was no longer able to work and he eventually passed away, they asked me to take over as the GC representative for that position. And a few months later, I was asked to come back here as the assistant secretary. It was GT.
Do we still have assistant secretaries?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So I said, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that because, Mike has a job here. He was working as the CEO at Quiet Hour Ministries.
Oh, okay.
And so he told me, he says, what do you mean you're saying no? He said, let's think about this some more.
That is not the right answer.
So it took, I think, about 3 months before we said, okay. And he resigned, and we came back, and I started working 2011 with as the assistant secretary. And I was doing that until 2014.
What were your areas of emphasis or something as assistant secretary? How does that?
Well, the assistant secretary basically helps the secretary and the undersecretary with anything they need. A lot of, administrative type stuff.
Okay. Who's the current assistant secretary?
Lacey Park.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I
Yeah.
just don't think I knew the titles and stuff like
Yeah.
that there. So, okay.
But we did, we also keep all of the service records for all the missionaries. For minutes, she's the coordinator of the minutes for annual councils, GC sessions, spring meetings, all of that. So a lot of that kind of work. And at the same time, when I came, I was the assistant director of IPRS. So I was already in both.
Okay.
So in 2014, they had an open position for an associate secretary, and one of the things that person needed to do was to liaise with our deferred mission appointees, which are the medical and dental students at Loma Linda, which I was doing at Loma Linda. That's what that job largely entailed. And so they said, well, what about Karen doing it? And I said, no, no. And so they asked me, and I went in and told GT, no, sorry, GT, I don't have this, I'm not that, I can't, no, And he listened. And then he said, Karen, if the church is asking you to do something, they see something in you, and you need to accept that and say yes. So I said yes.
Why do you think you doubted your ability to do it?
Oh, because I wasn't an ordained pastor. I wasn't an administrator.
Why would an ordained pastor need to be the person to liaise with medical students?
Well, because that's only one part of it.
I know. The reason I'm saying this is a very common thing with women. I'm actually reading a book right now where if we see a job description, we won't apply for a job unless, we have to hit 100% of those things. Whereas men will often apply even if they hit 50%. Because why not?
Yeah.
If the church is calling, I'm gonna echo GT's words here. If the church is calling you, it's because they see something. Why do we doubt? Why would you doubt? Why do we doubt a call that is being placed on us?
Well, that's a good question. For me, it was, in church roles, we function as administrative and executive liaisons, and I didn't. Yes, I had the experience vicariously and through working with pastors and administrators. I knew, a lot of what I needed to know, but if I wasn't an ordained pastor, would people, respect me, think that I was okay in this position? If I didn't have the advanced degrees, it was just more of my insecurities than
That's
anything.
what I'm coming to.
Yeah.
We struggle with our own insecurities. And the interesting thing is that God had placed you multiple times in your life in the right places to learn the very things he wanted for you to serve in the role you're in. Ordination, higher degrees, valuable and important. You made up for an experience and love for the church.
Well, and, the experience that we had is what really sparked the desire and the recognizing the need for caring more for our missionaries. Because we'd been there, we'd done that. We know what it's like to be out there serving in very challenging places with young kids, having challenges with your health. We, each of us experienced some health challenges while we were overseas. And, all of that. So it's like, yes, that's why we have a passion for working with our missionaries.
So you've served now as the Associate Secretary for how long?
Since 2014. How many years is that?
I'm not going to do math. I think that's
okay,
9.
almost
I think
9.
it's 9, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to do the math. I forget what year we're in somehow. COVID made me lose track of time. Before that, I seemed to do pretty good. I'm going to blame it on COVID and not getting older. I feel like that's much better.
You're
right?
okay with that. Okay.
What have been the greatest privileges of serving in this role?
Well, I think there's a lot of privileges. Being able to be in the middle of the decision making for the world church, being able to shape what direction mission is going. Right now we're in the middle of Mission Refocus, which that's been, my focus and Herman's focus for the last however many years. Being able to see the church at work up close and being able to see missions at work, being able to support and encourage our missionaries, being able to see different places and cultures and all of that. But that's really secondary. The work of the church frontline up close is really a privilege. And hopefully thinking that you might make a little bit of difference somewhere along the way.
I can tell that your heart is missional. Like you bleed mission, basically. I mean, it's
M.
right there. There are a lot of people who maybe have contemplated it. Does the church still need missionaries?
Everyone is a missionary, first of all. Whether you are a foreign missionary or a home missionary, you are a missionary if you are part of God's church. If you are a Christian, you better be a missionary. So that, to answer your question, I can be a missionary, and I should be, in my community where I live here. If people feel a call to foreign missions, there are a number of ways and a number of opportunities. But I would say that, yes, the church still needs foreign missionaries, but very specialized missionaries. We need church planters. We need people that can work in the front lines with unreached people groups, unentered areas, language groups that don't have any Christianity, basically, among them. Those kinds of people. And it's not easy. If you think back at our early pioneers, you've heard me probably share stories about some of them who went and never came back, or lost their children or a spouse. You know, there's sacrifices. And I think in our own lives and in the church in general, we need to come back to that sacrifice, that spirit of sacrifice, that we're willing to do whatever it takes to tell those people that have never heard about Jesus, let them know that he loves them.
If there is somebody who feels that call, the sacrificial, missional heart of service, what do they do?
The first thing is to pray, because God will answer that prayer no matter where you are or what you're doing. He will work it out. It's not us applying and checking off all the boxes, and he already knows where he needs you or if he needs you. So pray, be open, explore opportunities. You can look at Vivid Faith website. That's where the opportunities are listed for the regular ISE missionaries. There are different kinds of missionaries. If you don't need a whole lot of support, which some people don't, you could go as a tent maker, live in another country, be hired by an outside company of some sort, and yet be missional in sharing Jesus with your workers, with creating a Bible study group or whatever. So there are a lot of different ways, and there's not just one main way, but I think the greatest thing is to be open to where God leads you.
If you could, when you look back at your life, if there was one thing that you wish, a legacy of sorts, not that we're at the legacy stage, but if you were looking back, what would it be that you would say?
A legacy, or
what would you want to pass on to people? What has been the thing that you hope that you have changed, that you've made a difference?
probably the biggest passion that I have is for our missionaries, and to help the missionaries survive. We do great. We, send them to Mission Institute and they learn all about cross-cultural work and all of that. But the ongoing care and support, having someone there when they're isolated and they don't have anybody to talk to, having resources for them if they feel they need a counselor or a medical situation, whatever it is, to have those resources available. And we have so many more opportunities now because we have online resources. You can, go to your computer and go to a website and see whatever might need, whatever you need. But to have those available, but also to help the administrators where that missionary is working understand the viewpoint from a missionary's standpoint and be able to support and help them. One of the things we've been doing is having spiritual retreats for our missionaries in different divisions. And the reaction, the second retreat we had, I'll never forget, we required the division secretary, associates, some from Treasury, to be there. And at the end, they looked at us and said, we had no idea what the missionaries are experiencing and what they're going through, the challenges that they're facing. They went back and created a missionary care team at the division. And that was before COVID. And all through COVID, every week, they had an online meeting with the missionaries to support them through, all of whatever all of us were going through, but particularly missionaries who are away from home, experiencing sickness and sometimes even death because of that. So it's that kind of thing, that kind of not just spiritual support, but also any kind of support that they might need, physical, pastoral, emotional,
whatever. Thank you so much for coming, Karen. There's so much about your story that resonates with me. Someday people may hear my story. They get bits and pieces generally through the conversations. But there's so much that I see in our lives that have so many similarities. And now I understand why I gravitate towards you. You have a beautiful heart that is so missional. And I just want to thank you so much for your service to the church, for how you continue to inspire the next generations of missionaries, and that you use your own experiences to try to make it better for them in the field that they are at. And thank you for going to Sri Lanka and to Russia, and working in
the Middle East.
And the Middle East. And the Middle East. But even with your children. And I think one of the biggest takeaways I have is just this sense of faithfulness to God's call. That's what I've heard from you today, is the faithfulness to God's call, whether it be in marriage or to an actual job and position, and to not doubt when people call us. God has seen something within us. They have seen something within us. And I don't have to doubt it because God has already affirmed it. So thank you so much for all of that encouragement and the inspiration. I really appreciate you coming and joining me.
Thank you for having me.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of A&N Profiles with my special guest, Karen Porter. If you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, the YouTube channel, wherever it is you're tuning in from today. I don't want you to miss any future episodes. Thank you for spending this time with me, and join me next week as I continue to get to know the life stories of more inspiring people.